Well, good morning. How are you all today? And welcome to Integrative Preparedness. I'm Steve Smith. Let me ask you a question. Have you given much thought or much worry about the depopulation of the United States or whatever country you live in, or the world for that matter? What if I told you that there was a major organization that specializes in global military information and futuristic projections to an extent that estimated that by 2025, the United States would have lost 2/3 of their population? I'll tell you why I say that, and it's something to be taken seriously. The last couple that I've put up here about the next coming pandemic and the weaponization of Marburg or some others, H5N1, have brought a lot of comments. By the way, I should welcome, in case I didn't, I had something I was watching over there for half a second. It might have taken my mind out. Welcome to all the new people. Welcome both to those who are with us on YouTube and those who have joined us over on Patreon. For those of you who have joined us on Patreon, you've made a good decision because you've joined a community of a lot of smart people, and we're able to get into stuff over there that we can't on YouTube. So welcome to you. Avail yourself of all the information over there, or here if you're watching on Patreon, and be a part of the community. You're gonna love it. You're gonna get a lot out of it. Anyway, I have had some questions as a result of those last two, some very good questions from our viewers. One was, who do you take care of? You know, when everything's falling apart, who do you take care of? And what are your how do you prioritize that? I think that's important. I will answer that, not today, but that's on the list. Another is, when I leave, what are my plans? How do I hook up if we're going to have to bug out? How do I hook up with other elements of my group? Because everybody's not together. And then what about what you might call extra elements? Those people who aren't necessarily part of the group, but are people that I would want to, hopefully make sure that they're safe, whether it's take with me or not, whatever like that. That was also a good question that I'm going to answer, not today, but we'll get to that. I put it on the list. The two questions that I got from Patreon people, and I won't identify them because we keep stuff on Patreon kind of within Patreon, but these are a couple of excellent questions that I think deserve to be addressed in the broader area of YouTube because they will be helpful. One is about martial law. How do we deal with martial law if and when? I mentioned, and a lot of people saw the movie Contagion, okay, and where they implement martial law. And I will be addressing that. I have lived under martial law, and I think it's important to talk about that. So I think that's going to be next on the list. But today I'm going to answer a question when I was, I think it came off of yesterday's. And somebody asked me, what did I think of having to do with depopulation? What did I think of the Deagle report? Okay, deagle.com. For those of you who are not familiar with Deagle, they are, you could kind of compare them in some ways with the CIA World Fact Book. Not exactly. But they, little Stratfor, a little bit here, a little bit there. They keep track of information throughout the world, a lot of military, population projections and things like that. They have a chart, which I have put up on the Patreon. Excuse me, just a second. Which I have put up on the Patreon site already for everybody to see. And it shows that their figures, as of 2000, the latest one came out in 2017. This was before our last little unpleasantness with, the medical unpleasantness here within the last few years. So in 2017, they showed the population of the United States at 317 million. The world population are at about 7.4 billion. Their projection for the population of the United States in the year 2025, which is a year and a half off from now, is 100 million. Yeah, I said that right, 100 million. Where did the 217 million people go? You can find this if you want to go to deagle.com, but like I said, for our Patreon people, I've already put the chart up there. Interestingly enough, the estimated population or projected population for the world is 6.9 billion. Now that's not nearly the discrepancy of the United States, which they say they project to lose over 2/3 of the population between 2017 and 2025. Now, we don't know how many people we've lost over the last few years. Insurance companies tell us that the deaths have been elevated from what would usually be anticipated. We also know that ever since about the 1960s, the sperm count of males has been going down in the West, not just in the United States, but in the West. Interestingly, not other places necessarily, or at least not to the extent. We know that the demonization of the nuclear family has been in full thrust. We know that the encouragement for alternative lifestyles has been going at full bore. We know what those are, right? And people aren't having the children, and some boomers are dying off. I don't intend to for a long time, but boomers are gone. Do you think that would encompass all of the loss of 217 million people? I don't. What do you think could? Well, we can have our ideas. Now, I'm going to caution right here that on YouTube, if you're watching us on YouTube, you have to be very, very careful with what you say, okay? If you're on Patreon, if you're watching us on Patreon, you can be a little bit more open with what you say, okay, in the comment section. But think about that they project, and this is an organization that specializes in this, in projections. The United States loses 2/3 of its population. What do you think? What do you think about that? Now, one thing, and there will be those who say, well, no, that's not going to happen, which is a stupid, response, because it comes from a position of a refusal to look at the possibilities of something. And a refusal to consider information is enforced individual ignorance, okay? So for the person who says, well, it'll never happen, okay, well, you just refuse to consider anything, and your comment is not constructive, it's not helpful. But for those of you who actually like to think, consider the different reasons that this might be occurring. Hey, buddy, I'll be done in a minute. My oldest just came back in from his last day of school. I've been looking forward to talking to him. So consider the different reasons or the different potential causes of this. What do you think? Sure, pandemic. Yeah. Could there be anything else that might be responsible for that? Nuclear war? An EMP? EMP, they suggest that the EMP Commission, and this is what I wrote my books about, has estimated that 90% of the people in the affected area of an EMP would die within the first 12 months. Okay, well now, 90% of 317 million is a lot less than 100 million. Okay, which means that if it was going to be an EMP or a cyber attack, it doesn't have to be an EMP. It has to be grid down. So maybe we'll just start calling it grid down. Okay. That means that maybe the entire United States wasn't affected. We don't know what they base this on, but they have a reputation to uphold. And they track their information fairly carefully. whatever the cause might be, doesn't matter. Well, it can matter. It can matter because of the way that we would prepare for it or the way that we would deal with it afterwards. But what I mean is, it doesn't necessarily matter because the solution is the same. At least the solution that's within our ability to form. We talk about basic preparedness. Everybody talks about basic preparedness. I talk about advanced preparedness toward and finally culminating in what I call total preparedness, self-sustainability. Here again, you will find those that will come on and say, it's not possible to be fully prepared. And essentially what they're saying is that it's not possible for them because they're not going to do what it takes to become fully self-sustainable. The fact of the matter is that people have been self-sustainable for centuries. Okay, they didn't have just on-time delivery at the grocery store. They didn't have medical centers to go to. They didn't have a big government to come take care of them and let them swing in the hammock of social programs while they didn't work. They didn't have that. Matter of fact, the people who who lived in this country before the European settlers came were pretty much self-sustaining. Now they lived a Stone Age culture, yes. How it is they never invented the wheel, I still don't know. Did they never see a rock or a log roll down a hill? I don't get that. But when the European settlers started coming in, and then the pioneers started coming across the West, they lived a self-sustaining life. Oh yeah, they rented, went into town occasionally to get a bag of flour or something like that. But many of them didn't have a town to go to. They were self-sustaining. Now they were limited by their understanding of mechanics and science and things like that. Things that we have an understanding of now that to a greater extent than the average person did back then. But they were self-sustaining. And I know people right now who are prepared to the level that they could be self-sustaining. So that argument that it's impossible to be totally prepared, well, it's not. And the first step towards getting there is to accept that it's not impossible. Tom Jones, right? Shows my age. I never liked him, by the way. Just because I said Tom Jones, I never liked him. Or Engelbert Humperdinck, either. The girls liked him for some. The women liked him. So the first step is saying, okay, maybe this is going to happen. It could come from an EMP. It could come from atomic attack. It could come from a pandemic. It could come from a variety of different things. But it's your responsibility to prepare for it if you want to live. Now, if you don't want to live, I also get these comments. I'm always amused at the comments that say, I'm just going to get my lawn chair and light up a cigar and watch it happen. No, you're not. Yeah, I mean, maybe you will. I don't know. I have known some people who seem to have reached a point of such total disregard or uncare for their own life that they're just willing to, take what comes. Usually it's talk, though, and it has nothing to do. I know where I'm going after this. Well, so do I, and so do, everybody who believes a certain way. We know where we're going. But when it comes down to it, 99.99 ad infinitum nines are going to do everything you can to stay alive. So that also is kind of a silly thing to say. If you want to say it, I'll decide whether I want to pull your comment for being stupid or not. Whether I'm amused by it or whether I'm just tired of hearing it. Your job is to decide how far you're willing to go to prepare for this. I suggest you do a lot of your own research. Dig into this. Dig into these things. Put it together yourself. We're being told, we've been told for years and years and years that they want to reduce the population of the world. You know who talks about that, right? You think they got the money to do it? Yeah, they got all the money in the world. You think they have the technology to do it? Yeah, they have the technology to do it. Georgia Guidestones, right? Told us what? 500 million is what the world needs to be at. You know, the interesting thing was, and like I think I mentioned before, the majority of the reduction of the world population is in the Western developed first world countries. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is? And here again, I have to caution those watching on YouTube, you have to be careful with your answers. Those who are with us on Patreon, you don't have to be quite as careful. There's another thing that goes into this, and that is those countries that they show in their charts have the greatest reduction in population are also the home to most of the biolabs. What do you think about that? And how are you going to protect yourself against that? You know, just a couple of years ago, we got the news that they were moving the level 4 lab from Plum Island to the University of Kansas, which is, I don't know, 125, some 150 miles west of here, out in Manhattan, Kansas. You know, consider it. Consider the many things. The solution for everything is advanced preparedness. I don't have to talk about all that now. I just want to make that point because I talk about advanced preparedness in pretty much everything. As a matter of fact, you want the entire plan for advanced preparedness, here's where you get it, the Stonemont series. The Stonemont series, 6 books in novel form, everything you need to know about planning for, preparing for, surviving, and then rebuilding after a total collapse, in this case of the grid. Pandemic? Yeah, a lot of this would apply. This would also prepare you for that. If you haven't read this series, you should. I would recommend it. People all over the world recommend it. I've had people tell me that they've read through this series 5 times and are still learning things from it that they didn't catch the first 4 times. It's available on Amazon. I'll put the links down below in paperback and Kindle, or you can get it through the website of stonemont.us because it's the Stonemont series. Stonemont.us, not .com, STONEMONT.US. This is your complete preparedness guide for what we're talking about. So think about it. Advanced preparedness, if you are just now getting started, good. Build up your basic preparedness. Don't stop there. If you think that you're prepared now for, 6 months, a year, I would suggest, because this world is getting more and more complicated, it's getting so complicated that it's impossible to keep up with everything and understand everything. But we know what we need to do to be able to survive most things. And if you haven't taken your preparedness to that level, what level? As high as you can, you're taking chances. Because we have people who are determined, I think, to reduce the population, at least in the United States, by an amount that you could only describe as insane and evil. Do you think any of these people with the power are insane or evil or both? Well, if you do, then you agree with me. Okay. Check with it. Check that chart Think about this. I'll be interested to hear what you all have to say, especially the ones, if I'm going to say this, if you're not with us on Patreon, you are doing a disservice to yourself, because the community on Patreon is so intelligent. I learn stuff all the time. I'm looking forward to hearing what they say on Patreon. It's $1 a month. That's the entry charge. If you can't afford $1 a month, you shouldn't be watching this, to be real honest. You should be doing something to improve your life, because I would rather you go out and try to improve your life than get $1 from you. Okay? That makes sense? Yeah. Well, this has to be more than just entertainment, folks. You have to understand the real dangers that are coming our way. And you have to be willing to do what it takes to prepare yourself for it. So I forget if I said, if you're not with us on Patreon, the link is down below. Cost you $1 a month. Come on over. It's a great community, and you will learn a lot more than you just hear from me on YouTube. So keep this in mind. Keep this in mind. And see how you want to adjust your preparedness plans to be ready if this is what our real next threat is. Remember that we prepare well today in order to live well tomorrow, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.